You wake up feeling wrong, not dramatically wrong, just off, throat slightly sore, head slightly heavy. That specific feeling where you know before you even open your eyes properly that today is going to be different. Your first thought is probably something like, do I have medicine? Should I call a doctor? Can I get an appointment today? Or will I be sitting in a waiting room for 3 hours? You have options, you have systems, you have entire industries built specifically for the moment you feel the way you feel right now. Now take all of that away. No medicine, no doctor, no hospital, no waiting room, no pharmacy on the corner, no WebMD to terrify you at 2 a.m. No thermometer, no understanding of what a virus even is, just your body doing something wrong. And you have no idea why. That was the reality for every human who ever lived before about 200 years ago. And for the 300,000 years before that, ancient humans got sick. They got fevers. They got infections. They got parasites and broken bones and diseases that had no name yet. And somehow most of them survived. Not by luck, by something far more interesting than luck. Here is what most people assume about ancient humans and illness. They died, constantly, from everything. A small cut got infected, and that was the end. A fever lasted 3 days, and you were gone. Ancient life was basically one long medical emergency interrupted briefly by meals. That picture is wrong. Not completely wrong. Ancient life was genuinely dangerous. But the assumption that ancient humans were helpless against illness, that they had no tools, no knowledge, no systems for dealing with sickness, that assumption dramatically underestimates people who had been solving survival problems for 300,000 years. Because here is what we actually know. Ancient humans developed some of the most sophisticated medical knowledge in history without laboratories, without microscopes, without any understanding of germ theory. They figured things out through pure observation, trial and error, and something that turns out to be one of the most powerful medical tools ever discovered: each other. Let's start with what they actually used, because this is where the story gets genuinely surprising. In 1960, archaeologist Ralph Selecki was excavating Shanidar Cave in Iraq, the same cave where Neanderthal burials were found. Deep inside the cave, in soil samples taken from around a 60,000-year-old burial, researchers found something unexpected. Pollen, concentrated pollen from 8 different plant species, all of them medicinal. Ephedra still used today in decongestants. Groundsel used for pain relief. Yarrow, a powerful anti-inflammatory, still present in modern herbal medicine. Grape hyacinth used historically for diuretic purposes. Someone 60,000 years ago was placing medicinal plants around a sick or dying person. Not randomly, deliberately, with knowledge of what those plants did. This wasn't primitive guessing. This was applied pharmacology, without the word pharmacology. But it goes further back than 60,000 years. In 2012, researchers studying the dental calculus hardened plaque of Neanderthal teeth found at a site in Spain discovered something remarkable. One individual had been consuming significant quantities of yarrow, groundsel, and chamomile, plants with virtually no nutritional value, bitter tasting, not food, medicine, deliberate self-medication, going back at least 50,000 years. And here is the thing that should genuinely amaze you. Many of these plants actually work. Modern pharmacological research has confirmed that dozens of plants used by ancient and indigenous peoples have real measurable medical effects. Willow bark used by ancient Egyptians, ancient Greeks, and indigenous peoples across multiple continents independently contains salicin, the active compound in aspirin. Ancient humans didn't know what salicin was, they didn't know what aspirin was, but they knew that chewing willow bark reduced fever and relieved pain, because they tried it, and it worked, and they remembered, and they told the next person. This is how ancient medicine worked, not through laboratories, through generations of careful observation passed down as knowledge. In 2021, a landmark study published in the Journal of Ethnopharmacology analyzed 356 plant remedies used by traditional cultures worldwide. Over 80% showed measurable pharmacological activity. Ancient humans weren't guessing. They were right far more often than we give them credit for. Now here is where the social structure of ancient medicine becomes fascinating. In every hunter-gatherer society ever studied, without exception, researchers find evidence of a specific role within the group. A person whose primary function was healing, not a doctor in the modern sense, something older than that. A person who held the group's accumulated medical knowledge, who knew which plants did what, who knew how to set a bone, who knew how to treat a wound to prevent infection, who knew which fevers needed intervention and which needed only rest. We call them shamans, or medicine men, or healers. The specific word varies across cultures, but the role is universal. And here is something remarkable about this role. Archaeological evidence suggests it is extremely ancient. Burial sites from across Europe, Asia, and Africa, dating back tens of thousands of years, consistently show a particular pattern. Certain individuals buried with specific objects, pouches of medicinal plants, unusual collections of bones and teeth, objects that appear ritualistic but also deeply practical. In one Siberian burial from approximately 19,000 years ago, archaeologists found a woman buried with an extraordinary collection of animal bones, deer antlers, 2 human skulls, a pestle for grinding. Researchers believe she was a healer, someone who ground plants, who used animal parts medicinally, who occupied a specific and valued role in her group. And here is the crucial word, valued, because in a group of 30 to 50 people, the healer wasn't just useful. The healer was essential. They held knowledge that couldn't be replaced easily. Their survival mattered enormously to everyone around them. This meant something important for how ancient humans experienced sickness. You weren't alone in it. There was someone whose entire purpose was to know what to do when you felt the way you felt. Someone who had seen this before. Someone who had answers even if those answers were sometimes wrong. That is not primitive. That is community medicine. And community medicine turns out to be one of the most powerful healing forces that exists. Here is something that modern medicine is only now beginning to fully understand. Something ancient humans practiced instinctively for hundreds of thousands of years. Social support heals, not metaphorically, literally, biologically, measurably. In 2015, a major study published in Perspectives on Psychological Science analyzed 148 separate studies involving over 300,000 participants. Their conclusion was stark. People with strong social relationships had a 50% higher chance of survival across all measured conditions compared to people who were socially isolated. 50%. That is a larger effect than most medications produce. When you are sick and someone sits with you, when someone brings you food, when someone touches your hand, when someone stays, your body responds to that at a biological level. Cortisol drops, oxytocin rises, inflammatory markers decrease. Your immune system literally functions better when you are not alone. Ancient humans were never alone when they were sick. In every hunter-gatherer group studied, illness triggers an immediate social response. The sick person moves to the center of the camp, the warmest, most protected position. The group adjusts its movements around them. Someone stays. Food is brought. The fire is kept close. Anthropologist Kim Hill spent 20 years studying the Ake people of Paraguay, one of the most isolated hunter-gatherer groups remaining. What he found about how they treated illness was striking. When an Ake member became sick, genuinely sick, not minor illness, the group stopped moving. Hunting-gathering people who cover miles every day simply stopped, set up camp, and waited for the sick person to recover. Think about what that costs. Every day they don't move, they're not finding food. Every day of stillness is a caloric risk for the entire group. They did it anyway, because the calculation was simple. The sick person's survival was worth the cost. Every person in that group was a relationship, a skill, a piece of irreplaceable knowledge. Losing them cost more than waiting. This is community as medicine. This is the original healthcare system. And it was built not on money or insurance or hospital infrastructure. It was built on the understanding that your survival and mine are the same thing. But here is the part that changes everything. The part that modern medicine is only rediscovering now. The part that ancient humans knew so instinctively, they never had to think about it. The placebo effect is one of the most misunderstood phenomena in medicine. Most people think of it as a trick. You give someone a sugar pill, they think it's medicine, they feel better, but nothing real happened. Just psychology. That understanding is wrong. The placebo effect produces real, measurable biological changes, real reduction in pain signals in the brain, real changes in immune function, real reduction in inflammatory markers, real neurochemical shifts. The belief that you are being healed, the expectation of recovery, actually changes what your body does. And ancient human healing was built almost entirely on this principle. When a healer came to a sick person, they didn't just bring plants. They brought ritual. They brought ceremony. They brought the full weight of the group's belief that healing was possible and that this person was worth healing. The plants worked on the body. The ritual worked on the mind, and together they produced outcomes that were genuinely better than either would have achieved alone. Anthropologist Daniel Moorman spent decades studying what he called the meaning response, the body's biological reaction to the symbolic and social meaning of medical treatment. His conclusion was remarkable. Up to 30 to 40% of the healing effect of any medical intervention, including modern pharmaceutical drugs, comes not from the drug itself, but from the context in which it is given. Who gives it, how it is given, what it means to the person receiving it. Ancient healers were maximizing this effect without knowing it existed. The ritual, the plants, the community gathered around all of it, was creating the conditions for the body to heal itself as effectively as possible. The shaman dancing around a sick person wasn't superstition dressed up as medicine. It was, however, accidentally the most sophisticated possible application of what we now call the mind-body connection. Let's get specific, because when ancient humans got sick, what did the actual treatment look like? For fever, the most common serious symptom, willow bark for the salicin. Cold water applied to the skin not to cure the fever but to manage it. Rest in the warmest part of the camp. Liquids broths made from bones, which we now know contain genuine nutritional compounds that support immune function. Modern medicine's advice for an uncomplicated fever? Rest, hydration, fever reducers. We added ibuprofen and updated the chemistry. The fundamental protocol is identical. For wounds and infection, this is where ancient medicine becomes genuinely impressive, because infection was the real killer, not the wound itself but what happened to it afterward. Ancient peoples across multiple continents independently discovered the antimicrobial properties of honey. Egypt, Greece, indigenous Americas, Africa all used honey to dress wounds. Honey has measurable antibacterial properties. It kills several species of bacteria that commonly infect wounds. They didn't know about bacteria. They knew that wounds dressed with honey healed better than wounds that weren't. Same outcome. Different explanation. Certain molds were used to treat infections in ancient Egypt, China, and by indigenous peoples in Central America thousands of years before Alexander Fleming identified penicillin in 1928. They didn't know they were using a primitive antibiotic, but they were. Clay was used to draw infections. Many clays have genuine antimicrobial properties. Research published as recently as 2018 confirmed that certain naturally occurring clays kill antibiotic-resistant bacteria. Maggots were used to clean infected wounds placed deliberately on wounds to consume dead tissue. This is called maggot debridement therapy. It is still used in modern medicine today for wounds that don't respond to conventional treatment. For broken bones, splints made from wood and animal hide, binding to immobilize the fracture. Rest. We found evidence of healed fractures in ancient human skeletons, going back hundreds of thousands of years. Clean heals, proper alignment. Someone knew what they were doing. Someone set those bones correctly and kept them still long enough to heal. For pain, beyond willow bark cannabis, used medicinally for at least 5,000 years. Opium poppies, first recorded medically around 3400 BC, but likely used long before written records. Coca leaves in South America. Dozens of local analgesic plants discovered independently on every inhabited continent. Ancient humans were not suffering through pain with no options. They had a pharmacopoeia that took tens of thousands of years to develop and contained genuinely effective compounds. Let's rebuild what it actually looked like. You wake up wrong. Fever, throat raw, body heavy. By the time the camp stirs in the morning, people notice. You're not moving the way you normally move. Someone comes close not to ask how you feel with words, but to look, to touch your forehead, to observe with the kind of careful attention that comes from a lifetime of watching people in this specific way. The healer comes, not dramatically, just appears, sits beside you, asks questions through gesture and language, observes carefully, has seen fever before, has seen what kills and what passes. They prepare something. Bark stripped from a specific tree you've seen them use before. Ground between stones, mixed with water. Bitter, you drink it. They build the fire closer. They position you in the center of the sleeping area, the warmest spot. Someone stays beside you, not assigned, just present. By midday, a small group has gathered around your space. Not anxiously, just there. Someone brought meat. Someone tells a story not about illness, about something funny that happened 3 days ago. Laughter, carefully gentle, not quite reaching you, but close enough to feel. The healer returns at sunset. New preparation, different plants this time, more ritual this time, specific movements, specific sounds that mean healing is intended and healing is possible. You sleep. The fever breaks sometime in the night. By morning, you are weak but different. The crisis has shifted. Nobody celebrated. Nobody called it medicine. It was just what you do when someone in your group is sick. It was just how things worked. Modern medicine is extraordinary. I want to be completely clear about that. The things we can do now, surgery, antibiotics, vaccines, cancer treatment, are genuinely miraculous by any historical standard. But somewhere in building the most technically sophisticated medical system in history, we lost something that ancient humans had instinctively. We medicalized illness and forgot to humanize it. The average doctor's appointment in the United States lasts 17 minutes. You see a stranger. You describe symptoms to someone who has never seen you before, and will likely never see you again. You receive a prescription from a system that processes thousands of people exactly like you every day. The healer who came to your fire knew you, had known you your entire life, knew what you looked like when you were well, and could see exactly what was different now. Cared whether you lived not as a professional obligation, but as a member of the same small group whose survival was bound to yours. Both systems have saved lives, but only one of them made you feel like your life was worth saving. Research consistently shows that patients who feel genuinely cared for, not just treated, recover faster, comply better with treatment, experience less pain, and have better long-term outcomes across almost every condition studied. Ancient humans didn't call this the therapeutic relationship. They didn't have a term for it. They just never forgot that the point of healing was the person, not the symptom, not the diagnosis, the actual human being lying by the fire who needed to get back to their life. The next time you're sick, really sick, lying in bed sick, and someone brings you something, tea, medicine, just sits beside you without being asked, notice what that does to your body. Not just your mood, your body. That feeling, that specific physical shift that happens when you realize you are not alone in this, is 300,000 years old. It's your nervous system responding exactly the way it was designed to respond. The way it responded the first time a healer sat beside a fire and said, without words, I see that you are not well. I know what to do. I am going to stay. We built hospitals. We built pharmaceuticals. We built the most advanced medical infrastructure in human history. And the thing that still heals fastest, the thing that changes outcomes more than almost anything else, is the same thing it always was. Someone who stays. Someone who knows your name and knows something is wrong and doesn't leave until it's better. We had that for 300,000 years. We called it community. We called it family. We called it being human. Now we schedule it for 17 minutes and wonder why we don't feel better. Subscribe for the next surprising topic.